With earthquakes shaking the Pegasus Basin in the Cook Strait, we've all been reminded of the delicate balance of nature. When a magnitude 6.6 quake hit southeast of Seddon on Friday, down the coast in Kaikoura, the locals considered heading for the hills. But since the 80s, they've fought to become a world-renowned ecotourism destination. It's something they're rightfully proud and protective of. And as the prospect of offshore exploration drilling looms, they're warning the government the area's natural balance shouldn't be tested. Carmen Parahi investigates.
Kiuta, Kitai, from the land to the sea, Kaikoura is one of New Zealand's tourist and marine science hotspots. But there are warning signs. Beneath these world-famous waters, trouble is brewing.
Well, apart from sink their boats, we've got to stop them drilling.
We don't want them here. They can piss off, in other words.
How do I feel about it? I'm absolutely disgusted in it.
We're against deep sea oil drilling.
Whale Watch Kaikoura wins international awards for its ecotourism work. They're upset the government has let oil and gas explorers move into their territory, putting their business and community at risk.
Where they're planning to search for oil and gas is obviously pretty much smack bang in the middle of that pathway for the whales. So obviously that does cause us concern for those whales that could in some way be impacted in terms of their ventures down here.
They could stop coming to Kaikoura?
Absolutely, it'd be devastating. Devastating for this town.
An international seismic survey vessel is expected to start work in December. Sonar explosions will be used to map the seabed for hydrocarbons, indicators for oil and gas.
Can blow the eardrums, can disorientate them. Especially if you've got deep diving whales like a giant sperm whale going down being disorientated. If you're 2,000 metres down, you can drown.
The connection to the tohora or whales is part of the cultural identity of Ngāti Kuri, the local hapu or sub-tribe reliant on the region's abundant natural resources for food and jobs.
This is to feed us, this is to bring business here, which it has, because we're a marine tourism town. That's our playground, so we're very proud about that, and for me, it's upholding that for our next generations.
For generations, the sea has sustained this community and they're determined to protect it.
It'll be gone, all gone forever. And I want my great-grandson to be able to swim out here when I'm an old bugger sitting on the rocks and hook one for me,
Locals perceive their traditional way of life as being threatened.
If they were blown out of the water tomorrow, I wouldn't blink an eyelid, but you've got to keep within the law of things. So if the politicians will listen to a peaceful protest, so good, but if they don't, well, there's just got to be other methods. We've got to stop it.
So do you think it'll go further than just a peaceful protest?
Oh, it will. I know cousins and other iwis that are quite prepared to do some pretty radical stuff. It'll get quite nasty, I believe.
Anadarko's used to hostility, but it won't stop the multi-billion-dollar Texas oil company from moving ahead with its ambitious plans.
Any company that wants to come here and explore for oil and gas is going to make a very big investment up front. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And they're not going to make that unless there's something in it for them. That's the rule of business.
During summer, Anadarko will drill deep-sea exploration wells, considered the most dangerous part of any operation, off Taranaki and in the Canterbury Basin, south of Kaikoura. Anadarko also owns the rights to explore and drill up to 3 kilometres deep in the Pegasus Basin, from South Wairarapa to North Kaikoura for 5 years.
This economic zone contains potentially vast resources of hydrocarbons that can take many forms, from oil to natural gas. So these resources, if we're able to tap into those, discover them, tap into them, could be a source of enormous wealth for New Zealand.
But many in Kaikoura believe with increased wealth is increased risk, and they're unwilling to pay the ultimate price, an environmental disaster. But that's the problem, though, isn't it? It's because Anadarko is forever linked with the biggest oil disaster in history.
Anadarko was a passive investor in that operation, so we had no people of ours on that rig.
3 years ago, Anadarko owned 25% of the Macondo exploration well that discharged nearly 5 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico for 87 days after the Deepwater Horizon rig blew up, killing 11 men. That's the biggest oil disaster in history.
It is, yes.
And Anadarko was a part of it.
We were a part owner of that facility, yes. We were not operating it. We had no people on it. We had no say in how that was operated.
The company paid $4 billion to BP, its majority partner in the well, to settle its share of clean-up costs.
You know, there's a financial liability that's quite a different thing from responsibility for it.
Why should New Zealand trust Anadarko?
Anadarko, as an operator, has a track record of no serious incidents in any of its deepwater drilling operations. We have our own set of standards, a country has its own set of standards, the industry has, industry best practice. We will implement whatever of those standards is the highest. So yes, there's risk, but there are things you can do to mitigate risk.
He's accusing activists of using the Gulf of Mexico disaster to stir up trouble in Kaikoura between locals, Anadarko and the government.
Anadarko's coming in just 6 months.
Anadarko's coming in just 6 months.
Do we want those ugly punks?
Do we want those ugly punks?
No drill, no spill.
No drill, no spill.
Because we want to stop oil drilling and it's going to threaten our sea. I like looking at the whales and the dolphins, and then we might not have that when they drill.
It is the children's passion, and yes, we've gone further than maybe you would in a normal learning environment, but we do inquiry at suburban school and the children lead 5 weeks of their learning, and that's where it took us.
No drill, no spill!
Children need to be taught how to think, how to weigh up all sides of an issue. I guess what I'm observing there is that those kids seem to be influenced, and I think that's sad.
Well, we came down and spoke at their school some months ago, and then since then we've been having this rap battle over the internet.
Mike Smith is a battle-hardened Greenpeace activist. He's been invited by the community to discuss his views on oil and gas mining.
A lot of people throw their hands up in situations like this and say, well, there's nothing you can do about it. But there's plenty you can do about it, and if people act together in unity right across the community, Māori, Pākehā, Kaumātua, Rangatahi, everybody, well then you can win these battles.
Mike's planning a protest flotilla with locals to travel from Kaikoura to Wellington in October. Would Whale Watch consider joining a protest flotilla?
I wouldn't rule it out.
Controversially, the government recently changed the law to stop protesters from interfering with oil companies working at sea, referred to as the Anadarko Amendment by opponents.
There is no problem with people staying outside that 500-metre zone and waving their signs and shouting their slogans. Go for it. But it's a safety issue.
I'd be prepared to go to jail for 12 months if that meant protecting, this pristine, beautiful environment.
We've spoken to the police about what our concerns are, and we've basically highlighted what we see as the safety risk. It's not something that the police have been familiar with, so it's been incumbent on us to go and give the police information about exactly what's at stake here.
It's a difficult path to traverse for Sir Mark Solomon. He must help his people progress, but also protect their traditions.
We've had our talks with Anadarko, we'll continue our talks with Anadarko. We will continue putting through submissions to the government as they are putting these new policies in place.
Earlier this year, Anadarko and government officials were invited to Takahanga Marae to talk with the community, and they're expected to return in September.
I suppose we're like the rest of New Zealand. We have some that are very frightened of the concept of drilling for oil and gas, others that see that it's an economic boon. But what we wanted was to get as much information first so we could make an informed decision.
The Pegasus Basin exploration has coincided with plans to create a Kaikoura Marine Reserve, a strategy many local groups have been working on together for 7 years. Sir Mark has grave concerns New Zealand is at risk.
We're opposed. We're not opposed against Anadarko, but we do not believe that our government has in place the environmental protection mechanisms that could deal with a spill. We also don't believe that our nation could deal with a major spill economically.
Could Anadarko cope with a disaster?
Worst case scenario, there is specialised equipment that is held in strategic locations around the world that can be called upon.
How long will that take?
Look, it takes time. There's
How
no
long?
getting around that. It would take up to maybe 14 days to mobilise a capping stack here.
It is a beautiful place. It's the reason why Kuya Dacia Solomon believes deep-sea oil drilling is a threat.
I hate them. Can't stand them. They need to keep out of our country, off our shores, and stay where they are. We're clean. We like to be clean and green, but they seem to go around stirring it up, mucking up for all the Indigenous people, then move.
Sir Mark Solomon believes the government needs to do more to protect Kaikoura.
At this state, New Zealand government, it is nowhere near good enough for us to give any form of support. That's a huge ecosystem that oil could destroy.